Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to be on the 2012 NBA draft. Specifically, I'm going to be redrafting it and picking the different players in the different spots based on what we know now. Um, Besides that, I just want you to keep in mind that I will be drafting like the best available based on what we know now, but also like not something uncharacteristic. For example, Charlotte at number 2, they already had Kemba. Washington at number 3, they already had John Wall. So I don't think it would make sense for them to take a player like Damian Lillard, for instance, because it just would have been redundant and kind of a waste of the pick to go with a guy at that position. So to me, I'm gonna go with like what would make sense per um, what we know now and what we knew then. So without further ado, I think the first overall pick is still Anthony Davis. A guy who's going to be a perennial all-star, going to put up basically 25 and 12 every year with like borderline defensive player of the year level defense. And as we can see this year with the Lakers, he before the season got canceled or postponed, he was putting up like borderline MVP kind of a season, and the Lakers were the 1 seed in the very difficult West. So he's definitely a great player, and there's no debate that he was the consensus #1 pick. Charlotte at number 2. So they had Kemba at the time, and besides that, they were the worst team in the NBA. And so I think they could have used any position. And so I think for them, they would have gone with. I think for me, it's between Bradley Beal, Andre Drummond. Besides that, maybe you think. I know it sounds like a stretch already, but probably Draymond Green's in the mix too. But I'll say they go with Bradley Beal, a nice backcourt mate for Kemba, another really prolific scorer to pair with him, and a lot better of a pick than Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Washington at 3. At this point, they were looking for. They had John Wall. They had really nobody else still because they had picked Jan Vesely the year before, and that dude was trash. So they really were looking for anybody here still. I think by this point they had traded away JaVale McGee, or they were just about to, and they were going to bring in Nene, and he was going to play power forward more. So I think Andre Drummond honestly makes sense. Um, just because they don't need a point guard, so I'm not going to pick Dame for them. And I think that Andre Drummond's like the next best available player at that point, so I think he honestly makes a lot of sense for them. Cavs at 4, they had Kyrie at this point. They had Tristan Thompson, so they had like their point guard and center combo. So really, what they were looking for was like either of the forward spots or shooting guard, and I don't think that they needed a point guard, so I'm again not going to take Dame. I think this spot really comes down to like, I know it seems like we're already thinning out, but it kind of comes down to like Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, or Evan Fournier, or even Will Barton's in the mix at this point because this is not a deep draft after like about the top 5. But I'm going to say that they would have at this point gone with Draymond Green. Um, he can play either forward spots, and he plays really high level defense, and I think that's something that a young team needs. So I think that knowing what he became, they would have taken him. At 5, Sacramento. At this point, they had a floundering Jimmer. They had Tyreek Evans, who was going to be done with his rookie deal soon, and they had DeMarcus. And I think, honestly, they would have taken Dame because Jimmer basically flopped as a point guard in the league, and they really could have used a point guard still. So I think Damian Lillard makes a lot of sense for them. Portland at 6. Oh man. You know, I don't know what this team needed at this point. They they had just traded Gerald Wallace for this pick, and honestly, they had LaMarcus, they had I think Wes Matthews, they had Batum, so they really needed a point guard if you think about it. A point guard or a center. Um, Looking at this list, there aren't many of either of those point guards or centers to go around. Um, I think, as weird as it is to say, I'm going to say that they go with a center, and it feels like really high for a guy of this caliber to be going in the draft, but I'm going to say that they would go with John Henson, because I'm looking at this draft board and I'm saying, who are the best centers? Like, you either have John Henson, or you've got, um, I don't know, Jared Sullinger. But I think John Henson's the better, like, more longevity kind of a player, so I think that they go with John Henson. Warriors at 7, they still needed a small forward. I think they actually still go with Harrison Barnes, although it's like a very different draft before that. And I think he makes sense based on what they needed at the time. Toronto at 8, I believe originally they wanted Terrence Ross. I believe that's really, they had Lowry, they had DeRozan, they had Valanciunas, so they needed basically a wing or a power forward. And I think the best wing available at this point is Evan Fournier, who would actually go on to not be an all star, but be a borderline like Eastern Conference all star, I feel like. And that sounds weird, but he's a guy who scores like 18 points per game, is a good shooter. And Orlando, believe it or not, they are a playoff team. So I believe he is like what you'd call like an above average starter, I guess. But he, I think he's better than Terrence Ross or Dion Waiters, so I have him going next. Detroit at 9, they had Brandon Knight and they had Andre Drummond, so I think they really wanted like a wing player or like a shooting guard, small forward type. Again, the options are not very deep here. Oof, I'm gonna say Will Barton. Honestly, at this point, the options are pretty bad, but I feel like Will Barton is at least still in the league and like still being a good contributing player in the league, which is more than a lot of these guys like Dion Waiters, Michael Kidd Gilchrist, Terrence Jones. They might still be in the league, but they're like barely in the league at this point. Or even like Jeremy Lamb, a guy that is in the league, but like a distinct like backup role player kind of a thing. Same with Terrence Ross, like a very, I feel like, pretty defined um, six man kind of guy. Good, but six man kind of guy. 10, New Orleans. Speak of the devil, I actually think they go with Terrence Ross here. I think he's really the best available left. And honestly, um, they could kind of use anything at this point because they did not have CP3 anymore. And I think they really just needed anything because it was a franchise kind of devoid of talent. You know, you had Chris Kaman, who was old, and you had Al-Farouq Aminu and Eric Gordon, but you can slide in Terrence Ross at small forward next to Eric Gordon, and I think you do just fine. 11, Portland. Let's see here. What did they need after getting John Henson? I think what they really needed still was a point guard. The point guard options are pretty bleak in this draft. Uh, Tony Roten looks like about the best dude on the board as far as that goes, but I don't think they'd go with Tony Roten. So I'm gonna say that they go with Dion Waiters and basically pray that he morphs into a point guard type. He's already pretty ball dominant, so I don't think it's a huge stretch that he could become like a score first point guard. So I'll say that they go with him. Houston at 12 still was a very directionless franchise led by Kevin Martin and a plethora of role players. So I think that they kind of just go for what's best available, and I think at this point that is Jay Crowder, a very serviceable 3-and-D guy who plays pretty good wing defense, shoots the ball okay, can score you 10 to 12 points a night. Nothing spectacular, but a solid starter. I see some of these names over here, and it's crazy to think back to a time. I remember when each of these guys was going to be drafted, and I thought that they were so good from watching them in college, and guys like Quincy Miller, Tyshawn Taylor from Kansas. I thought he was going to be the real deal. Obviously, he was not. I remember Kim English from Missouri. I thought he was going to be a big deal too, and he just never did much of anything in the league. Terrence Jones, I love Kentucky, so I thought he was going to be a beast, and he just turned out to be very average. Fab Mello, I'm getting on a tangent here, but I thought it was a huge steal when the Celtics got him at like 22, and it just shows that you don't know until these guys get in the league. Same thing with Perry Jones. I thought he was going to be an awesome player, and he played like 3 years with OKC, and then he like went to Europe, I think. So shows that you don't really know until these guys get in the league what they're going to be. Phoenix at 13. They had no more Nash. They had I'm trying to think of who they had on this team that was like the quote unquote cornerstone. I believe they traded for Beasley this season, so like maybe they're not looking for a power or small forward, but they had Gartat, so I don't think they really needed a center. Um, so I think either guard spot or maybe a small forward would have been reasonable at this point for them. And looking up and down these lists, oh man, it's a stretch to pick anybody left at the wing spots. I guess Jeremy Lamb is probably the best pick here for them if they're looking for like a wing kind of player. Milwaukee had Brandon Jennings. They had Bogut still, even though they were going to trade him soon. They had Larry Sanders, I believe, at power forward. So again, they're looking for kind of a wing or maybe a power forward. I'll say they'll go with Terrence Jones or Austin Rivers or man, who's the last guy I was thinking about? Oh, Festus Ezeli. They don't really need a power forward, so I don't think they pick him. Man, it is bleak at this point. I'll say that they go with Terrence Jones. I don't know. At this point it's getting pretty rough out there. And Philly at the last pick, they didn't have. They actually had just traded for Bynum, so they actually probably weren't going to take a center. I actually really wanted to pick Festus Ezeli here, but I don't think that they were going to take a center because they had just traded for Bynum, even though they didn't realize he'd be injured for the whole year. They had just traded away Iguodala and Vucevic, and so I think they could have used a wing. And so, the pickings are slim, but I guess they'll go with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who's pretty athletic and a good defender for most of his career. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top 15 picks, doing a redraft of the 2012 NBA draft. Let me know your thoughts below. Maybe give me your order if you want, or just tell me what's wrong with mine if you'd rather just do that. Again, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.